Welcome to Outlaw Woodworking. This was all when I moved up here to the mountains. A lot of these were in a box, and I need to make a rack for them and take better care of them. So let's see what we can do, and let's figure out a rack to hold these. All right, let's get started. So right here I lay out all the heights and how I'm going to hold them in here. On these smaller ones, I figure out that I can do an 1.5-inch slotted rack, kind of like holding a cordless drill in a rack. And I put shelves in between the first two to, set some finished nails and stuff like that. So basically, I go through and I lay out all the nail guns and figure out how they're gonna hold on this rack. And I proceed to mark all the shelves and the holders for the tools. And what I got planned here is I got planned to dado the back of that thing. And here I'm getting the DeWalt router set up to do the dado. And I basically use a 3/4 inch guide with a 3/4 inch straight bit. I did a quick little test fit and it fit good, so I cut another side, I dadoed another side, and then I cut that side in half to act as both sides of my rack. And that worked out pretty good. The joints all lined up nice. I then cleaned up a little bit and got ready to, I drilled and screwed and glued both sides with the Craig pocket jig. And that always works really well, holds things nice and tight. Everything, those are 1.25-inch screws. I then flip it over and I check for square, and then I basically start cutting the width of the pieces that I need for the shelves and the nail gun holders. Once I get all those cut, I take them over to the table saw and I rip them down to their final dimension. And I think there's 5 total pieces, two shelves and then 3 racks, 3 holders for the nail guns. So I cut all those down on the table saw, and yeah, that dust collection on this little DeWalt table saw is pretty good. You don't actually see any dust coming off that thing with a 4-inch. So I then take and I proceed to lay out the nail guns on the first shelf to see how the holder is going to work. And so I line up all the small guns first, because those are the ones that I'm going to access the most. And so that's going to be on the lower rack. So I test, I mark all these out, and I figure out the depths of how deep they're going to go, and mark that. And then I proceed to take it over to the bandsaw and start cutting it out. I love this little bandsaw. It's a small one, but I think for my shop, I don't really need anything bigger. I don't really do that much really big stuff. So, and if I do anything real big, I'm doing it outside anyway. So yeah, here I go through and I cut out all these. Basically, it's just like a cordless drill holder. If you've ever made a holder for your cordless drills, this is very similar, and they hold in there exactly the same way. So I basically go through and cut all these out, and yeah, the bandsaw made quick work of it. The fence on this bandsaw is really straight too. It's surprising. It's very square. I've checked it quite a few times after doing stuff, and it's turned out pretty good. So there's the first rack. I test fit it in there. I fit a few nail guns in there just to check it out, and then I decided to round over all the edges before gluing it and screwing it, because if you it's hard, you can't get a router in there afterwards. So I just routed that all the slots so it'd be just smoother going in and out, and I wouldn't have to worry about getting splinters and stuff like that. So I get that one all routed up, and then I proceed to glue it and nail it in, check for fit, and obviously it looks pretty good actually, and it hung real good. So then I start work on the second one. I figure out what guns are going to go in that second one, and the second one's going to hold those coil nailers. So I'm only going to be doing 3 slots on this shelf, and they're a little bigger slots too, because the gun's a little bigger. So same routine. I just get the measurements all laid out, marked, and make sure that they're the right depth and everything. And then I proceed to take it over to the bandsaw and cut these out. Once over at the bandsaw, it just makes quick work of them. Yeah, you could whip this little shelf out pretty quick. So same routine. I basically go through and chop it out, test fit it first, make sure that these nail guns are fitting in there properly. And amazingly, they fit and looked pretty good in there, so I was pretty happy with that. I did the same thing. I routed all the edges afterwards, and then basically I just do the same thing, glued and nailed it in there. Once I got the second shelf all nailed, I started to lay out the fourth one, and it was pretty easy. I just laid it out the same way, and started cutting it all out on the bandsaw. Yeah, I mean, it's surprising I didn't have one of these nice racks a long time ago. So much nicer to keep all your stuff organized. And of course, I'd never really had a shop before. I always worked out in the field, and so all my stuff was really on my truck. But I did the same thing, just routed them all out, and yeah, then I just test fit the last shelf, make sure all the guns fit in there good, and yeah, everything fit really nice. I was really happy with everything. So I took it back. I took the last shelf and glued the last shelf in, nailed it off, and clamped everything overnight, just to let it all set up. And then the next morning, basically, I went through and sanded it, and then I, of course, decided that it needed a little sprucing up. So I took some walnut that I had, and I checked the thickness, and I didn't want to waste too much walnut, so I took the walnut and took and started ripping the walnut down on my table saw, because I didn't need super thick pieces of walnut, and I just wanted it to kind of trim out and look pretty good. So what I did was I ripped some 1/4-inch pieces for the face, and then a couple 3/4-inch pieces for the fronts of the 2 shelves. And yeah, I glued those and nailed them off. And walnut always kind of makes stuff look a little better. I made a couple mistakes where when I was cutting the 2 sides with the table saw, I left the table saw blade too low, and it tore out some of the side of the plywood. But the walnut dresses it up a little nicer, and maybe later on I'll put some water-based polyurethane on it or something. But for right now, this thing's looking pretty good, so I'm pretty happy with it. And now hanging it up there was a little bit of a challenge because I'm by myself, and so I used a ladder to prop it up there, and then made sure that it lined up in all the studs, and then loaded it up. And if I must say, I am really happy with this rack. It's going to save me a lot of time, being able to just reach over and grab a gun when I need it, and knowing which one's which. And yeah, I just set the nails underneath and nail gun rack, outlaw style. Thanks for watching Outlaw Woodworking. Later.